My 60-year-old mother-in-law suddenly fell in love online. She even wanted a mask tattooed on her body to meet her internet boyfriend. As a tattoo artist, I told my husband the true meaning behind that design. With my husband's intervention, my mother-in-law dropped her wild plan and even deleted all contact with her online lover. But when that tall, 1.85 muscular man, hand in hand with another older woman draped in designer clothes, stepped out of a Cayenne, my mother-in-law was consumed by a mix of fury and regret. She blamed me for making her miss out on a tall, rich, and handsome man. She tricked me into returning to her hometown, where she used a butcher knife to carve that very mask pattern, stroke by stroke, onto my body. The cold blade severed my artery. I bled to death in that remote village. Opening my eyes again, I was back in time, to the moment my mother-in-law held a picture of the mask, asking if I could tattoo it on her. "Chen, look, can this be tattooed?" My mother-in-law sat beside me, showing me a pink heart with wings on her phone. Her familiar voice made me jump. The phone was thrust before my eyes, and in that moment I couldn't believe it, rubbing my eyes, unable to process what was happening. "So, can it be tattooed or not? Say something." My mother-in-law impatiently nudged me, snapping me back to reality. I realized I had been reborn. In my previous life, when my mother-in-law showed me her phone, she was both shy and unable to hide her excitement about getting a tattoo. I immediately recognized it as a distinctive symbol of a certain subculture. Tattooing it meant becoming someone's slave. My mother-in-law had always looked down on my profession, deeming it disreputable, unworthy of her son who wore suits and worked in an office. This was the first time she had actively approached me about a tattoo. I felt a flicker of joy, but when I learned it was at the request of her online boyfriend, who wanted it on her lower abdomen, I knew something was wrong. I vaguely told her my studio couldn't do such a detailed design. After my mother-in-law pouted in disappointment and left, I rushed to find my husband, hoping he could subtly caution her. I don't know what my husband said, but afterward, she not only stopped mentioning the tattoo, but also no longer spent her days happily tapping on her phone, nor did she stay up late chatting on voice calls. I thought it was just a minor incident in our lives. Who knew that not long after, we encountered a luxury car on the street. A couple emerged. The man was tall and handsome like a celebrity. The woman, though well-preserved, couldn't hide the passage of time. Both were impeccably dressed in designer clothes, walking hand in hand into a high-end restaurant. My mother-in-law stared intently at the Cayenne parked outside, a terrifying glint in her eyes. The next day, using the pretense of visiting her husband's grave in her hometown, she tricked me into coming to the old house. My mother-in-law stripped me naked, tied me to the bed, and brandished a gleaming butcher knife. Following the mask picture, she cruelly carved the design, stroke by stroke, onto my body. "It's all your big mouth's fault. You said that tattoo was bad, wouldn't let me get it. If I had gotten it, Ethan wouldn't have broken up with me. If it weren't for you, I'd be the one in designer clothes and a luxury car right now. You cheap, jinxing wench." It was then I understood my mother-in-law hated me for preventing her tattoo, making her miss out on a tall, rich, and handsome online boyfriend. My mother-in-law frantically slashed my flesh with the knife. Blood splattered all over her body and face, making her look even more terrifying. My face contorted in agony, I writhed, wanting to beg, but my mouth was tightly taped shut, only able to emit muffled sounds. I even wished for a quick death to end the excruciating torture. "What's wrong? Can it be tattooed or not? Is it that hard to say a word? No wonder you're uneducated, couldn't find a good job, only fit for these indecent things." My mother-in-law's impatient voice once again ripped through my chilling memories. I took her phone, glanced at the mask picture, no longer probing for deeper meaning, and simply answered decisively, "It can be tattooed." Seeing her expression shift from impatience to shyness, I smirked. Of that subculture, I only knew through rumors how terrifying the reality behind such a tattoo was. I would let my mother-in-law experience it for herself. My mother-in-law pulled up her shirt, revealing her sagging abdomen, layers of fat jiggling. "Can I get it tattooed here?" I mostly just went along with her, saying, "Yes, that's perfectly fine." But the more confident I sounded, the more she hesitated, pressing her lips together. She shyly expressed her worries. "I'm this old and getting a tattoo. What if someone sees it? Wouldn't that be inappropriate?" I smiled, my gaze sweeping down to her exposed skin. "That's easy, Mom. I've heard customers say that this kind of design is best done discreetly. My mother-in-law pressed her lips together, lowered her head, took back her phone, and tapped out a string of characters. A moment later, she blushed and looked at me. "Then you tattoo it for me." I smiled even more happily. "No problem at all, mother." This time, I had to see if tattooing this mask would help her achieve her dream of marrying into wealth with that tall, rich, and handsome 1.85 man and reach a perfect ending. I graduated from university, but chose not to work in an office, instead opening a tattoo studio with my best friend. For several years, the studio has been thriving. From a small room of a few square meters, it moved to a luxurious commercial area in the city center. The number of tattoo artists also increased to 4. This place is also very close to my husband Charles's office building. Some of his colleagues have even come to my shop for their favorite tattoos. But no matter how successful my work was, in my mother-in-law's eyes, it was never a respectable job. Therefore, I had to block her from seeing all my advertisements, shop posts, and favored works I posted on my social media circles to maintain my peace of mind. Today was the first time my mother-in-law stepped into my studio. When the receptionist stood up, smiling sweetly and greeting, "Boss," I could feel my mother-in-law's clear astonishment. The sweet-mouthed, beautiful girl, hearing that today's client was my mother-in-law, praised her, saying how young she looked, how fashionable her taste was. These compliments made my mother-in-law's eyes crinkle with joy. The girl asked which tattoo artist I wanted to assign to my mother-in-law. I smiled and told her I would do it myself. After all, she was my own mother-in-law. I had to meticulously ink every stroke myself to serve her well. I led my mother-in-law into a private room. Early in the morning, the shop was still quiet. "Mom, this is anesthetic. Do you want to apply it?" My mother-in-law had already removed her pants and was lying on the operation bed. Hearing my question, she glared at me. "What's that supposed to mean? You begrudge giving your mother a little anesthetic?" I had to press my thigh to stifle a laugh, pretending to explain. "Oh no, Mom, it's just that I didn't explain clearly. You want this tattoo, and the colors are quite vibrant. If we use anesthetic, the colors might appear a bit darker." Previous customers who came to the shop already researched this themselves, so I was momentarily careless and didn't explain it to you. My mother-in-law frowned, thought for a moment, her voice a murmur as if speaking to me and also to herself. "A little darker probably won't be noticeable, right?" I began to disinfect her inner thigh, chiming in, "For those in the profession, there's a slight difference, but for us just getting a tattoo for fun, there's no big difference." Hearing me say that, my mother-in-law nodded. But just as I took out a small tube of anesthetic, she changed her mind again. "Never mind, if I'm getting a tattoo, it has to be the most beautiful, no more anesthetic." I stopped my movements, gently patted my mother-in-law's thigh. "Okay, then you'll have to bear with it a little, Mom. It'll be quick." I put on gloves, picked up the tattoo pen, and began to intricately carve on my mother-in-law's private area. The buzzing sound of the tattoo pen glided over her skin, each of her screams synchronized with the rhythmic vibrations of her body. How melodious it sounded to me. A tattoo that typically takes only an hour. I meticulously drew each stroke, extending the process for a full 3 hours. My mother-in-law was drenched in sweat, her face contorted in pain, but compared to what I had endured in my previous life, what was this? When my patience ran out, this magnificent work was finally complete. My mother-in-law was so pale and trembling from the pain, but she didn't forget to tell me to take her phone and snap many photos of the tattoo from various angles. I knew these photos were for her to send to that online lover, Ethan. During those 3 hours, while using my mother-in-law's phone to cross-reference images, I managed to thoroughly uncover her and Ethan's situation. Half a year ago, they became friends on social media. 3 months ago, after confirming their online romantic relationship, their conversations and exchanged photos were truly hot. Among the blinding white photos of abs, chests, and thighs, I painstakingly found Ethan's true face. It was the same man we had seen in front of the restaurant in my previous life, stepping out of the luxury car. From my mother-in-law's words, it seemed she still had some rationality left. In their conversations, she couldn't help but probe whether a handsome, muscular man like that, who was so passionate about her, might be a romance scam. Therefore, in her previous life, she had listened to my husband's advice, refused the tattoo, and then the online romance went nowhere. But that day, when she saw Ethan on the street, he was indeed as rich and handsome as he claimed, and he liked older women. My mother-in-law then became furiously resentful of me. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law disregarded the aftercare instructions the receptionist had given, her pale lips beginning to tap away on her phone again, occasionally blushing and smiling charmingly. In fact, 3 months ago, I had noticed my mother-in-law's unusual behavior, suspecting she was experiencing a second spring. I wasn't against her finding love in her twilight years. I even looked forward to it and wished her well. 3 years ago, my father-in-law passed away, and my mother-in-law moved from the countryside to live with us. Our 3-bedroom apartment wasn't too cramped for an additional elderly woman. But this old woman, relying on the fact that she once taught at the village primary school and raised the village's first master's degree holder, was arrogant. Once she moved into our home, she constantly caused trouble. She called my university a wild chicken school, worthless. Out in public, she would constantly complain to neighbors that I was uneducated, couldn't find a decent job, and her son had to support me. But clearly, my tattoo shop's income was higher than my husband's, and the house we lived in was inherited from my parents. Although my husband covered all household expenses, I had also bought him a 500,000 yuan car to save face. I didn't know where I was lacking, nor did I know what was indecent about my job. As for children, initially, we had asked my mother-in-law's opinion, saying we'd strive for a few years before having children. But when walking in the apartment complex, she would tell other grandmothers holding their grandchildren that I had a low IQ and she wouldn't dare let me bear children for their family. If it weren't for Auntie Me, our neighbor who was my mother's close friend for many years, I wouldn't have understood the implicit looks the neighbors gave me. And the idea of a son not being home meaning no savory food cooked, I thought that only happened in movies. The reality was, my husband went to work and didn't come home for lunch, and my studio was busiest in the afternoons and evenings, so only at lunchtime could I have a peaceful meal at home. But my mother-in-law, all the delicious fish and meat were saved to be cooked in the evening. It wasn't that I couldn't eat fish and meat, it was just that every day I ate their leftovers from the night before. I said eating leftovers wasn't healthy and wanted to cook fresh meals. She said I was wasteful and didn't appreciate how hard my husband worked for money. I said I paid for the food and would cook it myself. She said she wasn't used to my northern Chinese cooking style. I said everyone could eat separately. She would then sigh and wipe away tears. So, I could only repeatedly ask her to cook less in the evenings, but she never listened. I talked to my husband about these things, and he only said, "Mom isn't having an easy time either. Don't be too calculative." I comforted myself. What family doesn't have a few conflicts between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law? And so, I endured for 3 years. I had originally thought that if my mother-in-law found a partner this time, we could contribute some money to buy them a small house so they could keep each other company, which would also be a relief for me. Who knew my mother-in-law would fall into such a bizarre online romance? My mother-in-law warned me not to tell my husband about her tattoo, then limped out the door. As she left, I vaguely heard her shyly say something into her phone like, "Master." I watched her limping figure, unable to hide a smile. I picked up my phone and ordered a lavish lunch for my colleagues at the shop. It had both vegetables and meat, a balanced diet. For the rest of my life, I would never eat leftovers again. A few days after tattooing my mother-in-law, I saw some promotional tattoo designs posted on a colleague's social media. One of them had a crucial part covered, but anyone who saw it knew exactly where it was. The mask pattern was clearly visible on the screen. The image, after being reshared, was no longer clear, but that pattern was tattooed by my own hands, and the photo was taken at my mother-in-law's request. How could I not recognize it? It seemed my mother-in-law's photos had long been circulated throughout Ethan's subculture, even being used as promotional images for tattoos and passed on to other tattoo artists. The terrifying thing was that the incident didn't stop at just circulating these photos. Auntie Me sent me a video taken in the apartment complex's plaza that shocked me to my core. In the video, my mother-in-law, Mrs. Lee, wearing a tight red dress, stood in the middle of the plaza. The dress clung to her body, highlighting her deep curves, but what attracted even more attention was the studded collar around her neck. Behind the collar was a long leash, like a dog leash. In the video, my mother-in-law looked up and around, then suddenly knelt down and began to bark like a dog. The aunts and uncles who were leisurely strolling in the plaza, seeing the spectacle, gathered around. But my mother-in-law's actions not only didn't stop, but she barked even louder. Next, she barked and crawled like a dog among the curious crowd. The long leash dragged on the ground, and the red dress, due to her posture, rode up, revealing her black shapewear panties. The scene was both bizarre and offensive. This absurd act lasted for about 3 minutes, after which she finally stood up, breathing heavily, adjusting her dress with one hand, pressing something into an earphone with the other, then quickly left, leaving more than a dozen aunts and uncles speechless. Chen, don't blame me for being nosy, but your mother-in-law's behavior is terrifying. Do you want to take her to see a doctor? I continuously thanked Auntie Me, saying I would discuss it with my husband about taking her for a checkup. I warned Auntie Me that given my mother-in-law's condition, I didn't know if there was a risk of her harming others, telling her not to interfere at all to avoid getting involved herself. In my previous life, after I died, my soul didn't dissipate but followed my mother-in-law home. Her explanation for my disappearance was full of holes, but my husband didn't pursue it. In contrast, Auntie Me couldn't contact me and came to the house to inquire several times. Eventually, my mother-in-law's inconsistent statements made Auntie Me suspicious. She confronted my mother-in-law, they argued. Auntie Me was pushed down by my mother-in-law, her head hitting the security door handle, blood gushing onto the floor. I watched helplessly as the pool of blood on the floor spread, but I was already a vengeful spirit, unable to do anything. I screamed wildly in vain until I fainted. Waking up again, I had been reborn. I turned my phone screen with our wedding photo face down on the table. Now, I couldn't let the people who cared about me get hurt anymore. In the evening, under the strange gaze of the neighbors, I returned home. Before I even entered, I heard crashing sounds of breaking things and arguments inside. These were all within my predictions. I used a secondary account to join the lively resident chat group discussing the strange incident in the plaza today. As I hesitated whether to post Auntie Me's video, a kind neighbor, seeing people discussing it, quickly uploaded clear videos and images from multiple angles. In an instant, the chat group exploded. Some people concernedly asked, "Whose old lady is this? What's wrong? If she has a mental illness, quickly take her to the hospital." Someone joked, "Now we have to say the elders really go all out." Some gossiped mockingly, "If I get old and end up like this, please, someone kind, just put me out of my misery." Others who knew a little about the subculture cursed, "Shameless old hag, at her age playing these games. How many children in the complex will she corrupt? Who will take responsibility?" My husband Charles and I were both in the resident chat group. I intentionally tagged him to ensure that he, who often had group notifications turned off, would also see it. Today, I had turned down several customers, deliberately coming home early to watch the drama unfold. "Get out of my sight and go back to the countryside. Don't embarrass me here anymore." "Wah, Charles, Ethan and I have true love. He's a second-generation rich kid with lots of money. Don't you want to buy a big house for Lynn? If Mom marries Ethan, you can buy a house wherever you want. Mom is doing all this for you, Charles." "Wah." The two argued fiercely, their voices involuntarily rising. I stood outside the door and heard the name, Lynn. The key in my hand hung suspended in the air. Lynn was my husband Charles Jr. in university, whom he introduced to work at the same company 2 years ago. This increasingly close relationship led to her and my husband interacting very frequently. My mother-in-law also really liked this highly educated girl. Every time she criticized me, she would bring up Lynn for comparison. What did she mean? Charles wants to buy a house for Lynn? I didn't want to believe what I was guessing. But in my previous life, when I was murdered by my mother-in-law, and my whereabouts were unknown for many days, my husband's indifferent attitude had confirmed my suspicions. A second-generation rich kid, younger than your own son, what does he like about you? The wrinkles on your face or the fat on your body? The argument in the living room continued, but the sound of breaking things had stopped. Ethan said he lacked a mother's love since he was little, so he likes older women like me. The argument paused, and I vaguely heard my mother-in-law muttering, "Charles, trust me. I don't know how to tell you, but you must trust me. This time, I definitely won't miss this opportunity again." My hands were freezing, and it took a long time before I could insert the key into the lock and open the door. The house was messy, but my husband Charles' expression had softened somewhat. He only quietly warned his mother, "In the future, cut down on these embarrassing antics," then silently went back to his room. It seemed that the possibility of buying a house for Lynn had made him believe that having some hope was better than none. My mother-in-law saw me, her tear-stained face immediately shifting to a look of gritted teeth. "What are you looking at? Aren't you going to come here and clean up?" No education, no brains, not even good judgment. I don't know how your parents raised you. My father died when I was very young. Just before I was about to get married, my mother also passed away. Before she left, my mother told us that the wedding must proceed as planned. She didn't want me to be without a home like that. My husband Charles, his eyes red at the time, promised me and my mother that he would take good care of me, never leaving me for a lifetime. After marriage, he indeed provided good food and drinks in the house. Charles always yielded to me. When we got married, because he had no money, he couldn't give me gold and silver betrothal gifts. But after his work stabilized, he always found opportunities to make it up to me. I twirled the diamond ring on my ring finger, trying to recall when exactly everything had changed. Was it when his work became increasingly busy, with more and more overtime? Or when he introduced Lynn to the company? Or when my studio found its rhythm and my income surpassed his? I didn't take the rag my mother-in-law handed me, only replying coldly, "You made me an object of ridicule outside. How can you shamelessly tell me to clean up?" I turned and walked into the room. My mother-in-law stood stunned, perhaps because of my sudden change in attitude, I, who had always been gentle and humble with her, or because I brought up her bizarre behavior, making her feel ashamed. Looking at my husband Charles sleeping soundly beside me, I once thought that every marriage, after the sweet stage, would become calm. I attributed his cessation of joking and making me laugh to the transformation of a mature, seasoned man. So, I automatically played the role of a gentle, discreet, non-jealous housewife. But it turned out that this was just my self-hypnosis with false perceptions. I quietly opened my husband's phone, something I had never considered checking or sneaking a look at. Although the chat with Lynn had been completely cleared, there were multiple transfers of 520 and 1314, numbers symbolizing "I love you" and "a lifetime" in Chinese internet slang, all received by Lin Meng. In the food delivery orders, the durian I had just bought home, which made my mother-in-law furious and accused me of being wasteful, was delivered almost every week to a young lady in a Nanchang apartment. The hotel booking history near his company on the same dates were orders for condoms and fresh flowers. Based on Charles' private messages and social media likes, I also found Lin Meng's secondary account. From a year ago, she had started recording their intimate moments. I cried as I photographed these proofs of infidelity, but when I checked my husband's bank card, the balance was only 4 digits. It was then I realized he had already started to transfer assets. My heart completely froze. Lying on the bed, my limbs were constantly cold, making it impossible for me to sleep. The next day, I used the excuse of the studio being busy and moved into the shop. I truly couldn't live under the same roof with that pair of wolves, mother and son, anymore. At the tattoo shop, Liam brought 2 more colleagues to support my business. He was an HR in my husband Charles' company and adored freedom. For his 30th birthday, he got a tattoo of a symbol for freedom on his ankle. I really liked the symbol he brought and personally attended to him. Chatting, I realized we had this fate. I gave him a 50% discount. After that, he frequently shared my posts on his social media, helping me advertise. Most clients from their company basically found me through him. I couldn't resist asking him about Lin. Lin Meng, just mentioning her gives me a headache. Last month, she found out she was pregnant and kept taking leave every few days. She barely worked 5 days a month. If it weren't for people like her, discrimination against women in the workplace would be less severe. Liam continued to pour out complaints about how his boss and department heads discriminated against female candidates, putting pressure on his recruitment work. But I wasn't listening anymore. Lynn was pregnant. For the past year, I felt my career was stable and planned to start having children, but whenever I discussed it with Charles, he would say it wasn't the right time. It turned out it wasn't the timing that was wrong, but the person getting pregnant. Knowing the mistress was pregnant, when Charles called, his tone serious, asking me to come home to discuss something important, I was no longer surprised. If he hadn't sought me out, I would have sought him out. My husband Charles continuously avoided my gaze, sometimes sighing, sometimes swallowing. My mother-in-law nudged him 2 or 3 times, but he still couldn't say a word. Impatient, my mother-in-law snapped and spoke herself, "My son wants to divorce you." No prelude, no greeting, truly straightforward. I had rehearsed this scene in my mind many times. I always wondered how to respond without seeming weak, to maintain some last bit of dignity. Should I just say, "Okay," and turn to leave, or should I unleash a torrent of curses on this scumbag and evil mother-in-law to vent my anger? But before I could choose an option, my mother-in-law continued, "You don't need to be surprised. You were never worthy of my son anyway. You have no education, no job. Leeching off my son for 7 or 8 years is already a huge gain." I found it a little funny. My husband hated being called a mama's boy, yet even for his divorce, his mother had to speak for him. How ironic. I asked Charles, "Do you think so too?" My husband looked awkward, finally speaking. "No, Chen, these past few years haven't been easy for you, but I have my own difficulties. This marriage definitely has to end. Don't be too sad." My mother-in-law glared at my husband, a look of disappointment on her face. "Why are you still saying such things to her? My daughter-in-law is pregnant, and the child of 2 master's degree holders will certainly be smart. By then, I'll make sure to raise my grandson to be a great scholar." Hearing my mother-in-law grandly mention his mistress's pregnancy, Charles' face twitched, forcing a strained smile. "Mom, why are you still afraid of her at this point? Chen, quickly pack your things. My daughter-in-law will be moving in a few days to rest and care for her pregnancy. Pregnant women get upset if they see things that annoy them, and that will affect my grandson." This time, I truly couldn't help but laugh. If anyone was moving out, it was them. This house was left by my parents. My mother-in-law's eyes widened, her voice shrill. "Don't you dare threaten me. I used to be a teacher. Once married, assets naturally belong to the man. Move what? Quickly grab your things and get out. Don't make me tell my son to use force." My mother-in-law was a rare person of her generation who had read a few books. Back then, the village raised funds to build a classroom where she taught children phonetics and basic characters for a while. Later, when the official education department established a primary school there and sent qualified teachers, she returned home to farm. But that period of teaching, less than a semester long, gave her the title of teacher, which she used as capital for boasting. She didn't understand the law, but her son, the master's degree holder, certainly did. My husband Charles pulled his mother's arm, signaling her to stop talking. After a brief exchange of glances, my mother-in-law realized she was losing the argument but still refused to back down, saying, "What's so great about it? Charles bought Lynn an even bigger house than this one. It's just not decorated yet. We don't even care about your shabby house. It's not even in a good school district to help my grandson's education." My mother-in-law continued to ramble, but my brows had relaxed. Charles' hidden assets, weren't they just found? Charles filed for divorce, and I filed a lawsuit against Lin Meng, demanding the return of our marital assets. My evidence was complete. The deposit for that large apartment, along with the 1314 transfers and hotel expenses, totaled 960,000 yuan recovered. Because of this, my mother-in-law came to my shop and caused a scene. I made a call to Liam in Charles' company to come and watch the show. From then on, my mother-in-law never dared to show up at my shop again. My divorce from Charles was also finalized. When dividing the assets, I received 480,000 yuan from Charles. Charles had unintentionally transferred assets to buy a house for Lin Meng, while I had deliberately done so after my heart had turned cold. When my tattoo shop expanded, my best friend had transferred a large sum of money to me to cover decoration and operation costs. We had secretly added a loan agreement, so the money in my hands quickly went to repay the debt. And that tattoo shop, since it was initially co-invested by my best friend's mother, she contributed capital, I contributed labor. It had always been in her mother's name. It was just a pity for the car. I had chosen all high-end configurations, and it only sold for 200,000 yuan, Charles profiting 100,000 yuan. On the day we officially received the divorce certificate, my mother-in-law, Lin Meng, and Charles appeared. Lin Meng's belly was quite large. My mother-in-law intimately held Lin Meng's arm, constantly calling her my good daughter-in-law. I reminded them that I would be selling the house and gave them 1 week to move out. My mother-in-law shot me a sharp glare, then turned to stroke Lin Meng's belly, comforting her. "Don't worry, daughter-in-law, Mom will have money soon. By then, I'll buy you a large villa in Nanchang, so my good grandson can attend the best primary school in Nanchang." Lin Meng frowned slightly, somewhat disgusted, avoiding my mother-in-law's hand on her belly. Well, of course. Lin Meng was the highly educated woman my mother-in-law spoke of. Naturally, she wasn't foolish. She surely wouldn't swallow the fantasy my mother-in-law painted. At this moment, Charles looked dazed, with a hint of unhappiness. The lawsuit had taken a toll on his mental state and affected his work. He had even come to me, crying and complaining, wanting to settle privately to expedite the divorce. He said that initially, his mother always criticized me for being uneducated and having an indecent job, saying it so much that he was gradually brainwashed. Later, when his mother saw Lynn had an interest in him, she actively encouraged it. There was a hint of blame in his words towards his mother for disrupting his peaceful life and stable job. But now that Lin Meng was pregnant, he could only grit his teeth and move forward. Looking at these three people with their own schemes, I held the divorce certificate and couldn't help but smile. From now on, I would live a free and unburdened life. The future of this family no longer concerned me. Before, it was hard to find any gossip I wanted to hear. Now, when I no longer cared, news just found its way to me. A video filmed by a netizen 2 days ago in a bustling street was shared and, like tens of thousands of times, pushed to the trending page. In the video, a woman with curly, wavy hair provocatively swayed her large buttocks, publicly strip dancing on a commercial street. The angle was from behind, but the woman's figure, no matter how I looked at it, seemed somewhat familiar. When the woman smirked and took off her outer shirt, revealing a pink shapewear bra, she hesitated slightly, turning her head to look around. This turn of the head confirmed my suspicion. Wasn't this my ex-mother-in-law, Mrs. Lee? The video didn't clearly show what she was looking at, but this glance back seemed to give her courage and strength. The pink bra was then taken off and thrown onto the street. The curious crowd opposite grimaced, some quickly covering their young children's eyes. As Mrs. Lee began to touch her pants, law enforcement officers appeared. The video stopped there, but the comment section was incredibly lively. Anyone with a clear frontal video, give me a like, I'll send it privately. Is this the old lady who peed in the street last time? She looks a bit similar. I was there at the scene. I saw her wearing headphones. It seemed like she was following someone's orders before she started taking off her clothes. Is it what I'm thinking? Does this subculture have no filter? I frowned, quickly scrolling past this offensive video. My best friend had booked a high-end restaurant, 2,000 yuan per person, to celebrate my escape from misery. I couldn't lose focus. My best friend and I sat across from each other, surrounded by small, expensive dishes in the high-end restaurant, flipping through and taking pictures. After I had helped my best friend hold each dish in front of her chest and taken over 100 photos, a familiar figure entered my camera's view. Wasn't this Mrs. Lee's Ethan? I recalled that in my previous life, that luxury car had indeed been parked in front of this very restaurant. This Ethan's taste was truly consistent. My best friend, seeing me in a daze, also turned to look. Wow, Lucas is even handsomer in real life than in his photos. Before I could ask anything, another familiar figure, Mrs. Lee, rushed into the restaurant. Mrs. Lee screamed, "Ethan!" then charged into the restaurant. "Ethan, Ethan, why don't you pay attention to me anymore? What did I do wrong? Just tell me. I'll listen to whatever you say." Mrs. Lee tugged at Ethan's shirt, crying. Ethan fearfully backed away repeatedly. Seeing this situation, the restaurant staff quickly intervened, separating the two. Mrs. Lee clung to a staff member, continuing to cry, "Master, what do I have to do for you to pay attention to me? I'll bark like a dog, woof woof woof." Mrs. Lee suddenly knelt down and barked like a dog. This frightened Ethan so much that he repeatedly waved his hands at the curious crowd. No, I don't know her." Ethan, tall and 1.8 m+, looked helpless, almost on the verge of tears. Seeing that Ethan's demeanor didn't seem feigned, I pulled my best friend and asked about the Lucas she mentioned. "He's Lucas. He's just a small internet celebrity, but he only posts on foreign social media." I relaxed my toes, which I had been clenching in sympathy for Mrs. Lee, feeling a mix of emotions. In my previous life, I had truly died a wrongful death. "Ethan, what's wrong?" A girl with long hair, a short dress, and exquisite makeup emerged from the restroom, her face bewildered, hooking her arm into Luca's. Mrs. Lee, seeing the two so intimate, went wild again. "Who is she? Is it because of her that you don't pay attention to me anymore? Didn't you say you only liked older women like me?" Although Mrs. Lee was 60, she used to farm, so her physical strength was very good. Otherwise, in my previous life, she wouldn't have been able to easily tie me up and kill me. She struggled violently, pushing down the staff member blocking her, and rushed to Lucas and the girl, intending to slap the girl. Luckily, Lucas was quick, shielding his girlfriend in time, but his own arm took the full blow, making him wince in pain. "Ethan, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hit you. Master, I was wrong, Master." Hearing the word, "Master," Lucas' face turned ashen. Luckily, the police arrived in time, and all three were taken to the station for questioning. Mrs. Lee, for assault, was led out of the restaurant by 2 police officers, one on each side. She didn't resist, only muttering, "No way, it can't be wrong. In my previous life, I clearly." It was at this moment that I finally reacted. It seemed Mrs. Lee had also been reborn, which was why she was following Ethan's orders to do such outrageous things. Because she firmly believed that as long as she pleased Ethan, he would take her to the pinnacle of her life. The restaurant, to apologize, waived the bill for every table, but a meal without a good drama to accompany it felt ordinary. The next day, my best friend showed me Lucas's post on her phone. "I can't believe someone used my photos to catfish and deceive people online. I, Lucas, do not engage in online dating or casual flirting. This is my only social media account. Please don't be fooled." Below the text was a photo of him showing off his muscles after a workout, still handsome as ever. I scrolled down to see his previous posts. The long-haired girl was clearly his girlfriend, and the older woman with traces of time we met in my previous life was his mother. I don't know if Lucas pursued Mrs. Lee's harassment further. I heard about their family's recent situation when Liam brought new clients to me. "Chen, your ex-husband Charles quit his job," Liam said casually, flipping through our new sample album. Mrs. Lee's videos eventually spread to Charles' company. Many colleagues recognized her as Charles' mother, who had once participated in the company's family day. This made Charles unable to hold his head high at work, constantly taking several days off. Lin Meng, while Charles was absent, went and had an abortion herself. An advanced pregnancy like that, abandoned so easily, how dangerous. Originally, their affair was already creating unpleasant rumors at the company. Now, due to the abortion, they had a huge argument at work, almost coming to blows. The management had called them in for a talk, and afterward both resigned. Who said they resigned? It was just to save some face for former employees. Liam found a tattoo design he liked, immediately became enthusiastic, and stopped chatting with me, pulling a tattoo artist into the operation room. The next time I met Charles was when he actively came to my shop, apologizing. "Chen, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I personally destroyed our once happy life. Chen, do you know? It wasn't until you left that I realized the person I loved most was always you. I was possessed at the time, tempted by Lin Meng. I deserve to die, I deserve to die. Hit me, I've come to my senses now. I've broken up with Lin Meng. Can you give me another chance to start over?" Charles knelt before me, his eyes sincere as if it were our engagement day. But I was no longer the naive girl of 8 years ago who could be moved by a single promise of a lifetime together, never parting, and cast everything aside. During the divorce, I had someone investigate Lin Meng. She was also from a small town, climbing her way up step by step through education. That's why she shared a subtle sense of empathy with Charles, a same illness, same pity kind of feeling. But Lin Meng's family favored sons over daughters, and her path was much more difficult than Charles'. So she was very clear-headed. She knew what she wanted and what she needed to do. It's just that what Mrs. Lee said, "I don't have a decent job, I have to rely on my husband," was taken too literally, leading Lin Meng to mistakenly believe that Charles' 100-square-meter apartment in the new district, the nearly 1 million yuan deposit he paid her, the high-end BBA car symbolizing the middle class, and the custom-made suits that didn't repeat throughout the week were all earned solely by him. I guess after our divorce, Charles' assets were reduced to only a few 100,000 yuan, making Lin Meng realize everything. That's why she took the risk of aborting an advanced pregnancy. It was her decisive way of cutting her losses. Charles had clearly devastated his wife and child, yet he was here pretending to be deeply affectionate, pushing responsibility away. I felt nauseated, my face as cold as ice, telling him clearly that we were divorced and there was no way we could ever go back in this life. He still tried to cling on. 2 tattoo artists with tattooed arms in the shop stood beside me. He had no choice but to slink away. After Liam got his 3rd tattoo at my shop, he quit his office job and became an apprentice at the shop. He said he had found the freedom he always pursued. A year later, he rented a not-so-large shop near the university district, becoming his own boss. I bought a bouquet of delphiniums to congratulate him. As we were chatting animatedly, a short, stout man in black sportswear entered, politely asking, "Excuse me, can my pet stay outside?" Seeing a customer, Liam was very happy and quickly invited him to sit. Yes, this street has surveillance cameras. It won't get lost if tied at the door. The man smiled with satisfaction. I've had it for 2 years. It would be a shame to lose it. Saying that, he took out his phone and showed Liam a picture, quietly asking, "Can this be tattooed?" I leaned in to look. It was another winged heart, but the colors were a blend of black and pink. Liam hesitated a bit, but his shop had just opened, and he couldn't bear to turn away a customer, so he nodded and agreed. "Yes, it can be tattooed. Where do you want it?" The man in black smiled shyly. "It's not for me to tattoo. I'm tattooing it for my pet." Liam and I exchanged glances, momentarily unsure how to respond, but the man didn't notice our reaction, waving towards the door. "Come in." A woman wearing a pink studded collar with a long leash attached crawled in. She raised her head, and I almost dropped my jaw in shock. "Mrs. Lee."